Good evening, folks. My name is Mike Svetz. I'm a principal with Pros Consulting. It appears that the city is having a little technical difficulty with regards to welcoming you all, so I will take that on. I very much appreciate all of the attendees this evening as we kick off a very exciting project for you. This project is a recreation center feasibility study. And we will work through with you all this evening exactly what that means and also what that does not mean. What we will explain to you this evening is we will work through the process of explaining to you what the feasibility study is. And we will be looking to engage you all with regards to some live polling on things that you would potentially like to see within a potential recreation center in Rexburg. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'll kind of walk through some of the ground rules related to this evening's meeting and introduce my partner in crime, Kevin Armstrong from BRS. Okay, so a couple of things for folks to recognize is that we are going to take your questions via the Q&A function. And I do recognize that a number of folks have already started to submit questions, and we very much appreciate that. So please use the Q&A function. What this will allow us to do is it will allow us to automatically record all of your questions so that we in turn can respond to them in writing. Because of the large number of folks that are anticipated this evening, I think we're currently at well over 100 people. We'll do our very best to answer the questions live in writing, but I doubt we'll be able to get to everything this evening. We will not be able to kind of address questions live as in speaking to you on those behalf, but we really hope that the presentation will answer a number of questions that you may have. It also may create an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. So what we are going to do is take all of these questions and we will respond to them in writing with answers, and the Q&A document, as we like to call it, will be posted on the city's website by Tuesday, March 22nd, along with the meeting's recording. In addition to posting it on the city website, everybody who has registered for this evening's meeting, you provided your name and your email address. So we will email that Q&A document directly to you by Tuesday, March 22nd. And if connectivity is an issue, please do not worry. Just kind of log back in. And I'm going to ask Kevin that if for some reason my microphone does cut out, just yell at me, and I'll do the same for you when you're speaking. So this evening is really about introducing the consulting team to you all, critical factors for success, what the feasibility study process will be, the community engagement process, which is absolutely critical and foundational to this piece. To this study, and then the needs prioritization. We'll also talk a little bit about site analysis and concept plans, and then we will walk through with you some project considerations, but program opportunities and live polling, and then we'll finish with the project timeline. So just very quickly, our team is relatively tight. My name again is Mike Svetz. I'm a principal with Pros Consulting. I'm also a recovering Parks and Recreation director that has had a really wonderful opportunity throughout my career to be a part of design, construction, opening, and operations of 3 different recreation facilities across this country, ranging from 25,000 square feet up to 160,000 square feet. And for those of you who are familiar with the Provo Recreation Center, that facility is about 160,000 square feet. So to give you a kind of an understanding of what that is. PROS is a firm that works all over the country, has been in business for 26 years, and we really focus on the business operations side of the equation. One of our key partners in this project is Barker Rinker CCAT Architecture, and I will turn it over to Kevin Armstrong with BRS to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his firm.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Armstrong. I'm a principal at Barker Rinker CCAT Architecture. We're a firm that has been engaged with community recreation and community design for over 40 years. Our track record and our bread and butter is doing these kind of projects, and we do them on all scales. We do small projects all the way up to large projects like Mike mentioned before in Provo. That is one of our facilities that we did a few years ago. Most recently, we've done projects that include sports recreation, sports tourism, community recreation, all kinds. And that's what we're going to explore tonight, is trying to see what you all think might be the best fit for Rexburg, and then using some of that information to carry forward. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Kevin. In addition to PROS and BRS, we have one of our trusted partners, ETC Institute. We have worked, BRS and PROS, but PROS specifically has worked with ETC pretty much for the last 25 years. Their role on the project is statistically valid surveys, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we get into the community engagement component. But they do projects all across the country, survey work, and very specifically, they do survey work associated with transportation and parks and recreation. So a little bit about critical factors. So this is a fact-finding mission as much as it is anything else. So we really need to determine what's needed, where it's going to be located, and why. What is the vision for a recreation center in Rexburg and Madison County? What are the community's priorities in terms of needs and uses and spaces and experiences that you most desire? How large is the service area? I did see one question that indicated that you'd love to see that the facility can serve, Rexburg, Madison County, Jefferson, Fremont. That is something that will be determined, and very importantly, how it will be funded. So both in terms of construction and operations. So a little bit about the process associated with the feasibility study. So of course, there's the data collection and needs analysis component. And part of this is just a little bit of fact-finding mission, why this project is being undertaken by the community, what the needs were associated with the community master plan that was conducted in 2016 that leads to this. Market analysis starts to understand what are the other providers in what we will determine a service area. So that could be BYU, Idaho. That could be private sector, fitness places, bouldering places, CrossFits, Total Fitness, Planet Fitness, 24-hour fitness, anytime fitness. We recognize that you have a great outdoor pool, and we have to obviously take that into consideration as well. So the market analysis looks at basically the long story short is what a recreation center in Rexburg, what niche would it fill without necessarily taking away from any of the existing businesses, any of the existing offerings, to determine the right size of the facility, what the components of it should be, who it should serve. And there's a lot of data that will go into understanding doing the market analysis and the key findings associated with that. We're going to conduct key leadership interviews and surveys, and I'll talk a little bit more about the community engagement process here in a second. Once we kind of get through those first three, we will be able to kind of take a lot of that data, synthesize it, have it all talk to each other, and then we'll get into I would say the more fun part of the project, Kevin's part of the project, so to speak. We're going to talk about program identification, and we talk about that. We talk about programs in two ways. We talk about them in terms of the experiences that you all like to see out of a recreation center, but we also refer to that program identification as the spaces that are necessary to support those experiences. At the end of the day, your experiences that you want out of a facility will drive the design of the facility. Then we'll get into, once we kind of define that on kind of a spreadsheet level, then we'll get into the site analysis and the facility building program. This is where we start to look at different possible sites for our facility, as well as how it would fit on any specific site. We've got to take into consideration such things as parking, ingress, egress, transportation, traffic, competing or complementary uses associated with that site. And then we also look to develop we'll look to develop three concept plans. As we go through the concept plan development phase, we'll be going back and forth with cost estimating and operating costs. What this will in turn allow us to do is to look at the building, not just through the lens of what it looks like in a floor plan, but also the financial sustainability of it. There was a question early on about it'd be great to have a building pay for itself so that taxes would not be raised as much. This is part of the financial sustainability side of it. We recognize that there's a capital cost, or what we'll call a construction cost, but of course, anything that you build, you'll have to operate it. And a part of that then starts to translate into what we'll call the financing and operating pro forma. What this does is it starts to look at the revenues that can be generated associated with a facility and how those will offset the operating expenditures. We're also going to be doing a follow-up survey once we complete the concept plans. Once we complete the concept plans, we will start to look at, through the lens of the follow-up survey associated with supporting the facility through a potential bond referendum or taxing measure. There will be a lot of conversation as we get through this about setting up a taxing district. One of the things that we have done preliminarily is to understand what that means in Idaho. There are, I believe, 36 different recreation taxing districts within the state of Idaho right now. It's important to recognize that none of them extend beyond a single county's boundaries. So if we were to look to set up a taxing district that extends beyond Madison County's boundaries, that means that the folks, say, potentially in Jefferson or Fremont, would also be voting on any sort of bond measure associated with a recreation facility. We'll explain more of this as we get into the project, but rest assured that this is one of the analysis that we will be looking at as we get into the second third of the overall project. So the financing of it is going to be very critical, and determining a taxing district, determining a service area, determining cost recovery on an annual basis is all going to be a part of the overall feasibility study. And then, of course, we'll develop a final report, deliver that to City Council, and make a recommendation for Council to consider in terms of direction related to a recreation center in Rexburg. So the community engagement piece, as I mentioned, is very, very critical to this project. At the end of the day, we're building a recreation center for it to be used. And of course, we want to maximize the utilization of this facility. So just if I could pause very quickly, there may have been some folks that jumped on. I do see that participants do have your hands raised. Just a couple of things from a ground rule perspective. Your microphones and your videos are turned off for this presentation. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, please submit those through the Q&A function. Thank you. So we're really looking at making this a collaborative planning process. You know, part of tonight's meeting is to generate some curiosity about this project, awareness about this project, and to start to build some advocacy about this project. We want to be very clear about what this project is and what this project is not. What we are conducting is a feasibility study. This will, you know, develop concept plans and the financing associated with a potential recreation center. What we are not doing as part of this project is developing construction documents that in turn will immediately go to bid. Council will end up taking further action after a final report is delivered to determine the next steps associated with making a recreation facility a real project. What we are doing is determining what a facility would look like, what the uses of it would be, what the costs are, how it will be funded both operationally and capitally. But what we are not committing to is that at the end of this project, we're not committing that this project is going to go forward or it's not going to go forward. That it will be up to City Council, the mayor and City Council, and also then you all potentially in terms of a bond referendum to build a project, to build a recreation facility. We want to ensure that you have confidence in us, that your voice is being heard and reflected, and also that that you have confidence in the city that they will take appropriate action based on the recommendations coming out of this feasibility study. And of course, we need to be creative, and we're going to use a bunch of different tools to gather community input that I'll share with you here in just a second. So, of course, we will do focus group meetings. We will do virtual public meetings like the one that we have here going on this evening. We'll interview key leaders and stakeholders to understand some of the nuts and bolts and nuances that need to be considered for this facility. The idea is we're not going to do this in a vacuum. We absolutely are going to look to engage all walks of life in Madison County when it comes to developing this feasibility study. We're also going to be doing statistically valid and online surveys. So let me explain to you a little bit about a statistically valid survey and then how that relates to an online survey. So a statistically valid survey is scientific and defensible. Now, it is based on math. It is based on algorithms. The survey is going to be developed in partnership with the city. Ultimately, what ETC's charge is to ensure that the survey gets mailed out to a random sampling of the community. And that random sampling needs to reach all geographies and all demographics within the community. This could be potential users as well as potential non-users or supporters of a recreation center. We will get 300 completed surveys. So 300 households at a minimum will be represented by this initial survey. The point is for us to understand through the lens of the community as a whole, both the city and the county, the needs and desires and unmet needs and wants and support for a facility such as this. The statistically valid survey is not going to be open to everybody. As I said, it will be a random sampling of the community. We will then follow this survey up, which will take place this spring. We will follow the statistically valid survey up with an open-ended online survey where everybody will have an opportunity to participate. We will then merge the results of those two surveys into what we call needs prioritization. So this is an example. This is not, we obviously have not engaged any of you, but what we ultimately try to determine through the community engagement process and the two surveys is what are the primary or the highest priority needs of the community. What are the programs and services? What are the core program areas? Exercise, fitness, special events, enrichment, and then what are the facilities and amenities that are necessary to support these experiences? And then we'll develop a second tier and potentially a third tier. Again, what we're trying to do is determine the volume in which any experience is going to be utilized in a recreation center to give Kevin the opportunity to right size any of those spaces and ensure that the spaces that get incorporated into the concept plans are the spaces that are representative of what you all want in a facility. We're obviously going to very much rely on your input through this process. So again, we will be conducting some live polling here this evening that will be a part of that, but we'll also be doing that statistically valid survey to ensure that we get all reaches of the city and county, as well as then the open-ended online survey where everybody will have an opportunity to participate. So what we are committed to as part of this project is bringing back to staff, council, the community, a series of key findings and presentations. What we're not going to do is just introduce this project to you, go away, do our work, and then come back at the end and present a study. What we're committed to doing is presenting key findings and concept plans and operational financial plans along the way. There's going to be a lot of information and a lot of data that comes out of this plan. And our commitment is to keep you in the loop and in the know, and to get your feedback at every what we'll call phase or milestone of the project. I'll explain the timeline associated with this at the end of our presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. He and I are going to kind of tag team the rest of the evening as we go through concept plans and talking to you about different spaces and places associated with a recreation center. Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. So as Mike said a few moments ago with the vision and core program development, this is an example plan from a project that we were involved with that is under construction right now. But that study was conducted in 2018 and 2019. So some of these projects take a good amount of time to develop and then get their legs. But in this project, it was primarily looking at basketball courts and those kind of facilities, but also had enrichment classrooms, enrichment areas, dynamic spaces for children, indoor playgrounds, child watch areas, party spaces. And we're going to be touching on all of these here this evening and talking about them and seeing what you all might like in a center. What was key with this center was that this community did not want to have an aquatics component within this project. And so we listened to them, and that was not something that was delivered as a part of this center. They had already an aquatics area somewhere else in their town. And so it's one of those things where we really do craft these individually, place by place. And then we also make sure that as we lay them out, we're laying them out with good functional adjacencies so that really we're making the best use of any resources. And that feeds back into the operations discussion that Mike will have down the road for how we can best staff one of these facilities and also then help minimize that operational cost for staff. So when we're looking at these centers, what we want to do is we want to gauge what your interest is in the type of facilities that you want, the scale of the facilities that you want. And then from there, we want to test it. And as we're testing it, we may find that some sites are better suited for a facility than others. And so there's a number of different criteria that we look at relative to a site analysis, that we do this in a manner that is justifiable. We have items that are key metrics that we can measure with and really use this as a means to try to help determine what could be the best possible site for a project. And a lot of times that comes down to how much scale is needed. As Mike said earlier, we have to balance on any site looking at the area of the building itself and then parking to support the building and to support the uses for that, and then landscape areas around it, and then all the other critical infrastructure like stormwater and stormwater detention. Those sort of things all play into how big a site can be. And so what we want to get to, though, ultimately is a development of 2D plans like we just saw on the slide before, and then the potential to even look at it in 3 dimensions as it sits upon a site. And Mike, if you go to the next slide, perfect. This was that previous center that we looked at the floor plan of, that what we did is we then laid out a very graphic representation of what the site could look like, parking in the foreground. You can see the landscape is kind of blurred out. It's conceptual in nature at this point in time. It's not fully defined, but we have the big ideas there. So we know where parking would sit. We know how the building would sit on the site. On this project, there was an event lawn in the back of the building that then those classroom spaces could spill out onto, so you could have indoor-outdoor events. And then we also knew where we were going to try to put the main entrance to the project. So what we want to do is get from you the programming components for this project and then synthesize that on our end, think about it. That's the really fun part. Come back to you along the way that, as Mike said, we don't want to just come straight in with, here's your floor plan and here's the idea for your project. We want to say, this is approximately the mix we're thinking of for the programming. What do you all think? Take that back and we go through an iterative process and we bring you along the way in the process. So really it's truly a Rexburg facility, and it's not a facility that we are just transplanting from somewhere else. So the place that we start with this is looking at the program considerations for the project. When Mike talked about that a moment ago, program can be thought of as spaces, and then it can also be thought of as experiences. And that's what we want to touch on tonight. And this is where this presentation is going to kind of pep up and speed up a little bit, because we're going to be going through and talking about space by space, what the opportunities are. And we're going to look at it holistically, big picture, and then area by area and component by component. As we look at any facility, the key to making it work and to be successful is to balance the operational goals, to balance the expenses, the dollars that are going out to serve the facility, the revenue that's coming in. And so as we have those expenses going out, revenue coming in, what we want to do is really get the program mix to be correct to help meet the goals. And those are the goals that are laid out by the city of Rexburg and the goals of the community, where not all communities have the same goals. And that's what we're going to be figuring out during the study process, are what are the appropriate goals for you all? And then how do we try to meet those goals? And as we're trying to meet those goals, the main way we try to meet them is by balancing the recreation amenities versus revenue potential for the facility. Mike, if you could go to the next slide, please. Perfect. When we look at centers, often we try to think about spaces in terms of high revenue potential areas, medium revenue potential areas, and low revenue areas. And a successful center has all of these. So it's not that you can just do all high revenue potential spaces. A lot of these feed into one another. And we're going to talk about that tonight, of how we get that to work. But what we've done is, as we talk about each program component, as we're looking at them and talking about them with you all, we've assigned dollar signs to them. So a $3 sign space in green is one that has high revenue potential. Blue and $2 signs medium, and low, and red is $1 sign. But as I just said a moment ago, we want to try to have a balance of all of these. For example, like a child watch space really helps to support the functions of the rest of the facility. Or maybe there's a really strong desire for competition pools and lap swimming. We want to honor that. And how do we have other program features within the building that help to augment that programming and really make it dynamic and them serve one another? So that's what we want to touch on and talk about. So where we're going to start with this is talking about program opportunities and the types of recreation spaces. And we're going to just introduce to you all at a really high level. There's kind of 6 component areas that we're going to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about athletic spaces, gymnasium type spaces. We're going to talk about aquatic spaces, fitness spaces. Those are the kind of active recreation areas that you would think about in a traditional recreation center. And then community use spaces. Those are more of the enrichment kind of areas and classrooms and learning opportunities. Amenity functions and those kind of areas that help support all the rest of this. And then we also want to talk about alternative programming, programs that are out there in the marketplace that maybe we all haven't thought of, but could potentially be a part of a project like this. And so this is where we're going to start introducing the live polling concept. And I'll let Mike address to you all how we are going to facilitate that process.
Okay, folks. So what we are going to do initially is, Kevin, let me bring this back up. So we are going to ask you very simply through a polling exercise here in Zoom, which of these spaces you most prefer to see within a facility at a high level. So our first poll I'm going to do is I'll pause my sharing of the screen, and I'm going to launch this first poll. We'll give you about 30 seconds to answer it, but this is really a poll that is just asking you which type of spaces would you most prefer to see in a recreation center in Rexburg. So what I'm going to do is launch the poll, play a little Jeopardy music. When Jeopardy music is off, I will stop the poll and then I will share the results. Now you can choose multiple spaces, obviously, as well as then you can choose none of the above. So here we go. I'll let you keep going there for a little bit. All right, we'll end the poll and I'll share the results. So the results, let me print my screen real quick. So the results are, kind of favoring aquatic spaces would be number 1. Athletic gymnasium spaces would be number 2. And fitness spaces would be number 3. Then we get into community spaces, some of the alternative program spaces, and then the amenity spaces. So again, this is going to be one of these, it's nice to just get an understanding of where you all are thinking in terms of prioritizing your spaces. But just as a summary, over 50% of you who answered this question had indicated that aquatic spaces, gymnasium spaces, and fitness spaces were of the highest priority. All right. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin here. Hold on one second. get out of the poll. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin, and he is going to now walk you through a little bit more information about each one of these spaces, and we'll do live polling throughout this as well.
Perfect. So as Mike just said, what we're going to do is we're going to dissect each one of those 6 broad areas into kind of smaller and smaller categories, and then ask you all what your thoughts are about each one of these. So we're going to be going probably 5, 6, 7 spaces at a time, and then we're going to come back to the live poll. And so the first area we wanted to talk about is gymnasium and athletic space opportunities. And we lead off with this with gymnasium spaces because this is one of the tried and true community recreation spaces that's out there. Actually, the large picture here is at the Provost Center that we were talking about earlier. These spaces are great, and they're multifunctional and multifaceted for a ton of uses. And so you can run anything from basketball and volleyball, the sports you're used to seeing in these. Pickleball, which is now one of the fastest growing sports out there in the community. And it's a sport for all ages. It's done up and down the chain, all the way from active older adults to now in the collegiate level. It's a really popular sport at that, and it's even moving down to younger users as well. Badminton is still a sport that's being played in these, and then futsal, which is an indoor soccer type game, but with a dead-end soccer ball. And so these are kind of your more velocity, speed type sports that happen within a gymnasium. But then the gymnasium is also flexible. It can use a lot of other activities, including mat sports. You can host gymnastics events within them. When you're doing that, that means that you have a takedown and a setup time, but that you could have a gymnastics meet within a large gymnasium space like the picture on the upper left. That's a multi-court gymnasium space that's been converted over into a gymnastics area. So it's completely doable, and you don't have to worry about having pits and other things within it when you're using it in that function. Table tennis tournaments, cheerleading, cheer competitions are a really large event that happens in a lot of these big, wide open spaces, as well as judo, martial arts, other types of events like that. And then the gymnasium space can also support just general gathering and large group situations and people coming together. So it's really multifaceted. The next active athletic sport space that we want to talk to you about is indoor turf. And again, it comes in a variety of forms. You can have it inside an enclosed dasher board system, kind of like what you would see with hockey, or you could have it be more open and have nets on the side, but have it be more like an outdoor soccer field in a way that you're bringing inside. And so these turf spaces really support soccer, lacrosse, flag football, baseball, softball training, like that picture in the upper left with a collegiate women's softball team training. This is a community recreation center that a college helped to play into. Fitness classes are completely doable in these spaces, as well as in the gymnasium space before. And then you can even do cheer competitions within these spaces as well. And then the last area we wanted to talk to you about on this active athletic side is there's also communities that want to do indoor tennis within a recreation center. And for example, there's indoor tennis courts at a large center in Williston, North Dakota. And that was something that they wanted to bring the outside in. And within these spaces, tennis, pickleball, and then again, some of those other pickup sports that we were talking about before that are in the gymnasium, you could do in here as well. So, you know, again, judo competitions, cheer competitions, things that you bring in mats with, those are completely viable within this as well. And so that's giving you a cross section of some of these active athletic spaces. And so again, we want to live poll with you and get your feedback on these.
Okay, so the second poll is really going to drill down what Kevin just went through. Your preferences for gymnasium space, of all the things that he just mentioned. So again, I'll launch the poll. You guys can select as many of these as you want. Just a couple more seconds. All right. Here are the results of this poll. The vast majority of you favor a gymnasium for basketball, volleyball, traditional court sports. As an aside, the most participated sport in the country, not activity, but currently the most participated sport in the country is actually basketball. Secondly, you guys came in with indoor tennis and pickleball courts. Third was indoor turf sports. And then fourth was gymnasium mat sports. So of the two that more than 50% of you favored in order to how to use a gymnasium or what should be incorporated into a gymnasium would be the traditional court sports such as basketball and volleyball, and then of course indoor tennis and pickleball. All right, I will stop this share. I will get out of the poll, and I will get back to Kevin here with the next set, which is aquatics.
Thank you, Mike. So with aquatics, in this section, we really have a lot of strong revenue generation spaces, but then we also get good socialization and community dynamic type spaces. And that's one of the things that makes aquatic spaces so popular. And so we're leading off this with leisure pools and recreation activity pools. And this gives you a variety of functions, and they're really multifaceted. What's great about these kind of pools is that they're very inviting and welcoming to all ages and all users. So they're truly multi-generational. The water is typically warmer than what you'll find at a competition pool. And so from that standpoint, people don't get cold in these kinds of water environments. Oftentimes you'll find a shallow entry like the large picture in the middle. Play features, both of these show those in spades. Learn to swim opportunities. So there's oftentimes a lap area that's also included within a leisure pool environment so that you can do learn to swim and fitness lap swimming within that, where you don't necessarily have to have your square competition pool that we're accustomed to seeing in facilities in the past. This also then oftentimes will have a current channel as part of it that can be used both as a lazy river, but can also be used for low impact resistance, so that it can be used in a multiple means and ways, but provides a vibrant play area within that leisure pool environment. And then water slides are usually something that are brought into this as well. And so the large picture that you're seeing there has a large slide tower and various types of water slides that come down through it. And so that would be something that could be brought into one of these kind of areas and really gives a lot of life and vibrancy to this kind of space. Adjacent to these, oftentimes we'll also find a raised spa. And a raised spa area is also great in terms of rehabilitation, relaxation, and general wellness. We usually raise these spas up because then it creates a good ease of access for multiple users. And so even if you're in a wheelchair, for example, there's an easy, smooth transition that can happen between the chair to the side of the spa and then into the spa water. So that this is one of the more inviting spaces for certainly our active older adults and senior users. And it really is a strong focus on social gathering and bringing people together. This is going to be the warmest water environment within our aquatics areas. So the next pool that we're going to be showing is a therapy pool. And so this now is different than a leisure pool, where this is more about being calm and having wellness and having rehabilitation and those kind of low impact exercise activities taking place within these kind of pool areas. And very often there's ease of access, whether it's through ramps or lifts or a variety of means to get into these kind of pool areas. And so these oftentimes are more focused toward seniors, and then those that are rehabilitating themselves. That's the very important part of these kind of pool environments. And we're going to end this section looking at what we are more accustomed to seeing in a lot of facilities of the past, but they're also being built today, which are competition pools. And the reason these are incredibly popular still is that swimming is still one of the larger sports that's out there in the marketplace. And so with meets and a variety of events, and then even on the fitness side of things, we find that these pools have a lot of activity within them, but their revenue generation side is not as robust as what you've seen with the previous pools, where this is a little bit more, I guess I'd say less inviting to younger users. It's cold water, so children can get cold quite quickly inside these pool areas. So we usually do the leisure pools for a lot of their activities, but still learn to swim can happen within these. And it's great for events. Spectator seating is usually brought along with it. And then there's also other aqua fitness activities that can occur, like stand-up paddleboard yoga or kayaking, or there's even scuba classes that happen within these. So there's enrichment activities that happen within competition pools frequently as well.
Okay, so we will go back to live polling. Same exercise as last time. Let's do aquatic spaces. So again, just what you would prefer to see in an aquatic space in a recreation center in Rexburg. Have at it. Just a couple more seconds. All right, here are the results. 92% of you indicated that you would love to have a leisure recreational pool as part of an aquatic center. And 64% of you indicated a competition pool, and another 58% indicated a raised spa. So this is, I don't want to say that this is unique, because I think when you think about a pool and an indoor pool, you have a lot of competing interests and a lot of potential uses associated with it. Incorporating the three in which 50% of you indicated that you would love to see as part of an aquatic facility is fairly typical. And again, the one thing I do want to mention with regards to these polls is this is just one piece of data. Obviously, it's representing 100 or so households within the community that's participating this evening. And these are not the end-all be-all results. We're not going to take these results, as we said before, and immediately move to concept plans. We're going to gather other feedback through other means, including those surveys. So I just want to ensure you all kind of recognize where we're at with regards to this and how we will use this information. Great. All right, I will stop this one and I will turn it over to, hold on one second. I will turn it back over to Kevin to walk you through fitness.
Excellent, thanks, Mike. So fitness opportunities and active recreation areas. Oftentimes when we think about this, we usually start with the open fitness area and the large area that's great for cardio, circuit training, free weights, those kind of activities. Mike, if you could go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So here are a couple of examples of these kind of spaces. And these kind of spaces are usually pretty dynamic. You have a lot of times the activities happening together. in a single area. They can also sometimes be spread throughout a facility as well. So that's where there's a lot of versatility with open fitness. Cardio is extremely popular within these. Circuit training are the weight machines that you see around, and then free weights are, plate and dumbbell type exercises that you see within this. It's multi-generational. It's great for all ages. Active older adults oftentimes are some of the main users of these kinds of spaces, certainly in the mornings within a facility. And we'll talk about that later on as we keep moving on the project about time of day. When we think about this, this is a high revenue generation space. And now an offshoot of that is the functional fitness area that Mike just pulled up. And so this is what you're seeing out there. There's kind of the more finite version of it, which is CrossFit, other kind of functional fitness gymnasiums. But this also is within the community recreation realm, where you have kind of more open versions of this, and you really introduce people to the functional fitness world. And then if they find they want to go further than this, that's when they'll move on to the private gymnasium and those private clubs and those activity areas. So within this, it's really about strength and balance and movement. TRX bands are a big part of it, and using your own body weight as part of the exercise environment versus lifting weights. Weight training still is a part of this. And again, this is also a multi-generational area. It's great for active older adults, but all the way down to kids and teens that are starting to train within these areas, and then everywhere in between. It's the full spectrum of the fitness user that will use these kind of spaces. The next space that we're going to look at are group fitness areas. And so these are your fitness classrooms and those kind of spaces of a variety of sizes, everywhere from 15 to 20 people up to 50 people is usually the largest you'll get within a group fitness area, but you'll have that full gamut in between. And so this is encompassing spaces for yoga, dance, Zumba, aerobics, spinning and spin bikes. Again, these are multi-generational areas, and these are areas that are usually flexible. You can make dedicated group fitness type spaces, or you can make spaces where, like the spin bikes, you'll pull off and store them into the side, and then it'll turn over to become a yoga studio or have a different kind of activity within it. Again, these are still extremely popular within the recreation world and help support a lot of activity and wellness for the general population. A finite version of this is looking at now personal fitness areas. These are much smaller rooms that are typically set up for either small classes or even for individuals. And a big part of this is trying to be inclusive, that it's being more and more recognized that family groups may want to exercise together within a space like this, or an individual that may have body image issues or some other event like that where they don't want to be out in the general public but still want to have a fitness activity. That's what these spaces are really geared toward. Or that rehabilitation side, general wellness in particular, this helps to feed into that. The reason it's at more of a $1 sign versus the other areas that have a higher potential revenue return is that it's less people can use this space at any given time, but it can be an important element that can help augment the overall fitness and wellness within the center. The next aspect now starts to plug into some of the spaces that we've already looked at, and this is getting into virtual fitness. So there are different systems and programs out there. Wellbeats is one of them that we're showing on the screen. And so this would be if there's a class that you would want to take that there may not be an instructor in Rexburg that offers teaching that class, you can then go select a program within Wellbeats and then have a virtual fitness trainer, and you can do that within the community recreation facility. And so oftentimes we find that being facilitated and used when maybe that classroom is in an off hour, and so then people can go in there and select a class as they want. And then the blue wall up in the corner is more of an interactive game type fitness that's great for younger users, where you can turn a gymnasium space into something that's more interactive and dynamic. The last item we wanted to touch on here is walk jog tracks. And so indoor walking and just walking and fitness in general is one of the more popular sports out there and more popular activities. And so we want to create these kind of areas. We're showing them both a flat that's on the same level as a gymnasium court, or we could do an elevated walk jog track and eliminate some of that interference. And that'll be something that we're going to refine further as we get into the concept design of the project. But it creates a wonderful opportunity for creating a tour of the facility where somebody gets to walk through this and really, it doesn't have to just be a rectangle around a gymnasium. It could explore further and beyond that. And that'll be something we may explore further on in the concept design development of the project. So,
all right.
Perfect.
All right, we will go back to some live polling. Hey, one thing I did notice before I jump into this live poll, I was looking at some of the Q&A, and there was some comments regarding racquetball courts, which I know we have not necessarily incorporated into our presentation, but I want you to know that we will certainly reflect those comments as choices on the both the statistically valid and the open-ended survey. So for folks that asked that specific question, I wanted to be responsive to that and let you know that I don't believe we have racquetball in here or squash or things like that in here, but we have heard you and we will incorporate it into the more formal surveys that we'll be doing. So obviously this next poll is about fitness spaces, same exercise. I will just let you guys have at it without much direction. Just a few more seconds. All right, I will end the poll and share the results. So 87% of you indicated that the space you would most prefer to see related to fitness is an indoor walking, jogging track. And let me explain the significance of this. The #1 most participated activity in the country is walking for exercise. So it is not surprising to see that an indoor walking, jogging track would, would be the highest possible choice. Also, I think your climate probably indicates that there are certain times of the year in which the only place you can walk is indoor. So 87% of you indoor walking, jogging track. 71% of you indicated group fitness exercise spaces. So the aerobics, yoga, spinning, Pilates classes, and so on. And another 59% of you indicated open fitness center. So the equipment, the weight training, resistance training, cardio, and so on and so forth. The functional fitness spaces came in at about 32%, virtual 23%. Would say that probably if we asked this question 3 years ago during COVID, or a couple of years ago during COVID, virtual fitness spaces certainly would have come out a little bit higher. But we are pretty much near the end of that pandemic, so we fully recognize why it comes out at about 23%. So at this point, I will stop sharing this and we'll turn it back over to Kevin to continue with community use spaces. Kevin?
Great. And just so everyone knows, we're about halfway through doing these. And these next ones should go relatively quickly as well. So we want to be mindful of everybody's time this evening. So when we start looking at community use spaces, really we start with the large gathering, large classroom event type areas. And so these are for people coming together for greater than 50 people. Really, this is about community gathering and events, special functions. It does have the potential that could be used for rental purposes, for parties, for galas, those sort of things. And then they can also be subdividable. So then you can have one larger space, or you can take it and make it into 2 or 3 smaller spaces and make them into what would be the next slide, which is the medium classroom spaces. Medium classroom spaces now are for more like 20 to 50 people, somewhere in that range. And that these more are focused toward meeting areas. They're multifunctional, again, rental and event support. So let's say we have a lot of basketball courts in the center, and then we're doing a basketball tournament. This can then be the scorer's room, or it could be a support room for that larger event. That's where these come into play in helping to support other uses within the center. They can also be subdividable at this scale as well, but this is now becoming a little more versatile, but used for different gathering, different activities, different social interaction. And then below this level is now we get into spaces that are more for 20 people, and that these are for smaller meetings. Again, they can be multifunctional. They can support larger events. What's key to all of these is having great storage. So you can see kind of those cabinets on the back wall here. Though each one of those is dedicated to a different user group, so they can store their items in there, open up their cabinet, pull out their items, pull out their wares, have their activities, and then put them back. So that's the idea of a space like this. The next area that we're going to touch on is now looking at multi-generational game rooms. And traditionally in the past, these were thought of as like teen rooms and teen activity spaces, but really we're finding that throughout the time of the day, they're used by all age groups and all age ranges. So they're wonderfully set up for traditional games, ping pong, billiards, card games, those sort of activities. Music is often a part of these types of spaces. Esports is a growing trend that is sometimes used within these spaces, or they even get their own dedicated space. And we'll touch on that when we look at alternative programming. Study areas, as crazy as it sounds, some people like to study in these kind of areas, but really it's about social gathering and bringing people together. The next space we're going to look at is the party room. Pound for pound, this is one of the higher revenue generating spaces within a center. And part of that is because it supports classroom activities, but during the weekends, it's great for birthday rentals and other activities. And you can turn these spaces over, and you can have then activity in the party room, and then go out into the pool or go into other areas of the recreation center, and then have the next parties get set up. These spaces are wonderful in terms of revenue generation and that rental side of things, being supportive of the rest of the center. And then a couple more here within this environment, senior activity spaces. It has been recognized that dedicated spaces towards senior activities in some communities is very essential, where maybe a multi-generational space is less important. And so these would be lounge and game areas, dedicated classrooms, art spaces, and meeting spaces. And the large picture you're seeing is active older adults doing chair aerobics in a senior center in one of our centers down in Texas. We have a couple more here. This is an arts and crafts classroom. One of the things that makes this an individual area, that it is multifunctional for various arts components, but it does have specific support needs, both in terms of like a sink or a kiln for pottery, potter's wheels, art areas. We want to make sure that these are easily cleanable. And this is where you don't want some of these activities spilling into the other meeting rooms within the center, because we want to try to keep these kind of the mess controlled in this space, but it's a wonderful immersive environment for creativity. And then the last room we want to touch on with this is looking at Whether it's a teaching kitchen or a catering kitchen, both can be successful within these areas. And this is about enrichment, healthy eating, teaching nutrition, having demonstrations that you can see in the large picture in the middle. There's roll-up garage doors there that then open up into a classroom next to this. So now you can have a larger teaching classroom occur at these teaching kitchen stations. So this is also in support of the other multi-use areas within the building. But with these, we typically want to try to get them onto the exterior wall of a building with dedicated exterior entry so that you can easily load in and load out from these kind of spaces. Oh, Mike, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Okay, so I will get back to the poll here. Same exercise with regards to community use spaces. Ready, set, go. We'll give you a little bit more time. There's a few more choices here for you to walk through. Just a few more seconds. All right, I will end the poll and share the results. 83% of you indicated that from a community use space, you would most prefer to see party rooms. Second to that would be a multi-generational game room. Those are the two that are above 50%. And then we do have quite a few folks in the, quite a few choices in the 40% range, such as arts and crafts spaces, large classroom event spaces, as well as medium classroom, medium meeting rooms. Again, thank you very much. We'll get back to the poll, but again, party rooms and multi-gen game rooms are the two as part of this poll that are most preferred. In other words, more than 50% of you indicated that. All right, get back to Kevin.
All right, this next section we're going to talk about are amenity and functional support opportunities for the center. And some of these will have polling options on, and some of these we won't. But we want to just show you what is needed within the center to try to help make it work. So really it starts with lobby entry spaces that we're finding more and more that creating a nice, warm, welcoming environment is extremely important within our centers. And then also trying to have some of the program features get shown within those, like the large picture in the middle. You can see a walk jog track that meanders through the lobby up above. So you're creating a dynamic environment and people are automatically getting a taste of what's happening in the rest of the facility from that area. Really, really popular within centers is creating lounge areas of various space and sizes and creating areas for social gathering for people to come together. Certainly coming out of the pandemic, what we're finding is that human connection and social interaction is important for all of us and for our health and wellness. And so creating these kind of areas that you can either meet in small groups, large groups, you can have spaces for extroverts and people that want to be seen, or you can have those tucked away seat areas so that you can have a quiet area to do homework after school, or as your kids in a league or at practice, you can do work on the side. Creating these kind of areas is important within a center to really create a wonderful, enriching environment. The next space we're going to look at is the Child Watch area. And this is a space that although it's got a low return on investment within the space itself, this really helps to support the rest of the facility. That this is for short-term, often child minding. It's 2 hours or less is typically what's done. It has interactive toys, games, play, and a learning environment that's supervised for our youngest participants within a center, but then it provides a convenient drop-off point for parents, families, grandparents. As we're getting more multi-generational in our society, this allows that touch point to happen, and then a family member can go off and use the rest of the facility. So everybody's having a good time and it's welcoming to all. Associated with this at times can be an indoor play environment that can be attached to a child watch area, and that you can add that into the controlled environment of that child watch space. Or you can have an indoor playground that's open and that is not dedicated to that, but open, and users can use it and it can become a focal point within a facility. The picture in the middle you're seeing is an indoor play structure that's at a recreation center we did in Hobbs, New Mexico, where it's a 3-story play tower that then has interactive bridges and slides that connect you together, and the entire recreation center circulates around. Beyond this, we're looking at concessions and cafes. I saw in the Q&A somebody was asking about those kind of spaces. They definitely can be in support of the rest of the center. And one of the things that needs to be taken care of with this is how that interacts with the rest of the spaces, its time, what kind of food environment, what kind of meal offerings you want to have within this. These are all going to be important considerations, but it can definitely be a part that helps to augment a successful facility. We also see a growth in inviting in partner spaces and pro shops within centers as well. On the pro shop side of things, typically we see that really successful with like tennis facilities or areas where you may forget an element that you need, that piece of equipment within a center. We oftentimes see that being the case. I saw in the Q&A somebody was asking about hockey and ice. That's also going to be something that's going to be in the other surveys that are out there. We want to get that feedback. A pro shop is really well connected within that kind of use. And then partner and wellness activities, and having those kind of partnerships where you can then come in here, get treatment in this space, and then go out into the open fitness area, and along with a trainer, learn how to exercise properly or get sports medicine or physical therapy in that space. In a lot of communities, this can be a successful business model for both the center as well as for those vendors within that space. And then locker rooms, again, it's not something we're going to ask you, do you want locker rooms? It's just locker rooms in the past kind of had a negative connotation, and anymore, we want to make them into one of the most welcoming spaces within the center, that we want to feel inviting, warm, and friendly. And then we want to have great graphics to help guide you to it, like the large picture in the middle where you can see women's at the back, men's in the middle, and then family in the front, and that your wayfinding and guidance is easy to find, and that it's well regarded, easy to come to, and that's intuitive to how you get there. Team rooms can also be a part of a center. These are frequently a part of like league sports and tournament facilities, and ice facilities are a wonderful example where you have to have team rooms to support the events on the ice, or indoor turf. This can be a space as well. We'll want to have a deeper conversation if we go down this path about how to make these effective within a center. And lastly, we want to just touch on storage. It's completely critical to make a successful center is to have great storage. And even though we can think of it as not programmed space, it's the space that helps the whole rest of the facility work. And so we want to make sure, as we're taking the design of this project forward, that we think about storage and how it can be appropriately executed within the center.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Again, another poll. This one will be about amenity function. So ready, set, go. Just a few more seconds. All right, we'll share the results. So in terms of amenity function spaces, indoor playground was number one. 84% of you indicated you'd love to see an indoor playground. Second was Child Watch. And then third was lounge areas, small and large. Again, the concession cafe kind of came in fourth, almost about 50% of you, 44% indicated that. So again, these are great starts for us with regards to understanding your community's preferences that will be teased out even further with regards to the overall community engagement process.
Hey, Mike, the results aren't showing up on screen for all of us. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
There you go. Okay. Indoor playground was 84%. Thanks, Kevin. 67% on Child Watch, 59% on lounge areas, and then another 44% on concession cafe. All right, so as I said, this is a great starting point for us with regards to understanding community preferences, which will be teased out a little bit further as we go through the community engagement process. Thank you. All right, we will get back to the next last alternative spaces, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Kevin?
Yeah, and so this is the last area we want to touch in, and some of these are more traditional sports, and then some of these start going kind of off in tangents. So the first area is looking at a dedicated gymnastics space. And we put this as an alternative space opportunity within this exercise because it is something that we're seeing in centers, but it's less frequent at this point in time. But in some communities, there's a really robust gymnastics program that's there. So we want to make sure that it's something that we can recognize, and that if this is important to Rexburg, we want to make sure that we can provide it within the facility. Similar to that are looking at challenge course areas. As we've seen the popularity of Ninja Warrior and CrossFit gain and grow, we're seeing this offshoot into doing challenge courses within centers. And in some community recreation environments, this is being built within the center and within the space. Or if you have gymnastic space, this can also be programming that can be added and augmented to it. It does require a kind of specialized equipment to run it and to operate it. And so that's the thing that makes this unique and on the alternative front. Next is climbing. And so whether or not we could put into this facility a dedicated climbing space, or it can be integrated to other spaces within the center, like the picture on the upper left, where it was augmented as part of a game area and that kind of multi-use game lounge kind of space. It does require specialized construction and equipment. There's a variety of design opportunities where it can either be in a taller two-story environment, or we just completed a center that had only a bouldering wall that went up to 9 feet. So it was in a one-story space, but it was long along a corridor to give you more activation within that hallway, to give you a nice visual feature, but to give that climbing opportunity for younger users. But at that height, you don't have to clip on and tie into the rope to go up to the top of the wall. An offshoot of climbing is something called clip and climb. And this, we just opened a center last year in West Virginia that had a clip and climb feature within this. So this does require dedicated space and specialized construction to make it work. But really, this is designed for younger users, kind of tweens, that kind of 12, 13-year-old and on down. And it's vibrant, bright colors, interesting climbing activities, slide activities, those sort of things. But it's in a controlled environment that's staffed and monitored. But it does become one of those features that if you have like a tournament type facility or a league sport facility, if somebody's not actively involved in those sports, or a family member could come and use the clip and climb space while practice is happening. That's kind of the idea with this kind of area. birthday parties as well. Again, another thing to help activate the building and a party room from that side. The next item is trampoline park. This is less common in a community recreation environment, but it does happen. And so we wanted to show this as a potential opportunity. And this certainly requires a dedicated space. The next option is something that's out there. There's a facility in Colorado Springs, Colorado, that is looking to develop one of these, where it's a roll glider, which basically is almost like hang gliding inside the center, where you get harnessed and strapped in, and then you go around a track throughout the facility. And so if we do something like this, we'll need to be careful of what lies beneath this, but it could create a really dynamic and active environment if this was a path we wanted to go on for the project. Golf simulators. Golf is a rising popular sport with the pandemic. We'll see if it continues down that path. But these kind of spaces, it doesn't take a whole lot of room, but offers a multi-generational activity that can be all weather and works for all ages, both younger users as well as up to active older adults. And then the last space we wanted to touch on here is esports. This is one of the fastest growing segments that's out there. And a couple of years ago, people might have thought that this was going to be a fad within the community recreation environment, but it's looking like it's more of a trend and is something here to stay. And so is it something that could be embraced? And part of the value of having an esports environment within a center is maybe some of those people that would not have come to a traditional recreation center may use this as a gateway for coming into the facility, and then see other programming opportunities or seeing other wellness and fitness opportunities and grow in that environment and grow in that way. These can be really interactive, dynamic, fun-looking spaces. And if we go down this path, we'll have to have conversations about appropriate types of gaming, those sort of things. That this is definitely something that's a growing trend within community recreation. Oh, Mike, you're on mute again.
I am. That is the phrase of the last 2 years. I apologize. All right, one last poll regarding the overall alternative spaces. You all know the drill. I'll let you go. Okay, folks, I will end the poll and share the results. So of all of the alternative spaces identified by Kevin and listed in the poll, only one rose to above 50%, and that is indoor climbing and bouldering. Again, these will all potentially be options associated with the survey. So very much appreciate your taking these polls. I do have one last poll. So originally we asked you of the overall spaces. And what I wanted to do is re-poll you after Kevin has taken the opportunity to walk through what athletic gymnasium spaces are, what fitness, aquatics, and so on and so forth. I want you to take that first poll again just to see if there are any potential differences now that you're a little bit more informed about what makes up some of those spaces. So we have one last poll for you to take. And again, it's pretty much a repeat of what we saw the first poll. Go right ahead. So which of these spaces do you overall prefer? Just a few more seconds. All right, I will share the results. So pretty much the same where we were before, with aquatic fitness and gymnasium kind of coming out on top. A little bit more support for community spaces, amenity functions, and alternative spaces than originally. But again, pretty consistent from the very first poll to the last poll. So thank you very much. I will bring us home here with regards to the rest of the presentation. All right, so as noted before, just a couple of things I wanted to identify just with regards to some of the questions that came up. The market analysis absolutely will look at all existing businesses and offerings. The point of this study is to understand whether or not a recreation center is a good idea in Rexburg, number one, if there's a demand for it, how a recreation facility in Rexburg, if it was constructed, how it can be balanced with existing businesses. The point of this is not to put anybody out of business, it's to understand the niche associated with a recreation center that can complement what else is going on out in the market. As indicated, another question regarding the surveys, the city will continue, as they did with this meeting, will continue to push information out about all of the community engagement opportunities as part of this project. One of the things regarding the statistically valid survey is that it will come in the mail, but you will have the opportunity to fill it out online. Same thing with the electronic survey or the open-ended survey, that will be available online. We can't just assume everybody has great internet access, so we do have to offer the statistically valid survey by phone and mail as well. The whole point of this exercise, and a lot of questions around, are we going to have a hockey rink? Are we going to have racquetball courts? Are we going to have spaces for roller skating? We are working through this process, and why the community engagement piece is so important is to understand your greatest needs. We recognize that a building cannot take care of every possible wish and want. You can't size it large enough. You can't afford it to build it. You can't afford to construct it. You can't afford to operate it. But we need to understand, in relationship with the market analysis, what the niche of this building is and right sizing it. We will take all of the comments regarding racquetball courts, hockey rink, and incorporate those as choices in addition to many of the choices that you've seen this evening into the survey. And again, this has been really, really helpful for us to understand some of the things that we didn't include in the presentation this evening. So again, I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to address some of the questions that came up. So our timeline here overall is, of course, meeting series number 1. As we said before, we commit to having these virtual community presentations along the way, but we expect to be kind of wrapped up with the key public needs assessment, market assessment findings in May, June of this year. which will then quickly move into concept plans in July and August. The operations and financial plan will follow shortly after Labor Day, and then a final plan in late fall 2022. One question was, will there be additional meetings after we deliver our final presentation? That is a course that will be determined by, number one, the results of the feasibility study, but then also actions taken by city administration and council with regards to the next steps regarding acting upon putting into action, I guess, the results of the feasibility study. So just wanted to make sure that answered that question as best as we possibly can. As we've said before, if there are any additional questions, please use the Q&A function, not the chat. Tried to respond to many questions this evening. Others we can't get to, but we do very much appreciate all your questions and comments. They are very insightful and very helpful for us as we continue down the road of developing this feasibility study. We will take the Q&A document, develop it, put it in writing, respond to all the questions and comments, and it will be posted on the city's website along with a recording of this meeting by Tuesday, March 22nd. As I indicated earlier, everybody who has registered for this meeting will receive an email with that Q&A document as well. So you won't necessarily need to hunt for on the city's website for it. But again, we will leave this Zoom open for you to provide any additional questions, concerns, comments, suggestions for the next 15 minutes or so. But on behalf of Kevin, myself, the city, and many mayor, council members, city administration, and you all, we really appreciate your time, your attentiveness, your responsiveness with regards to the polling and the surveys, and look forward to connecting with you later this spring before summer gets underway, to share with you kind of the key findings that have come out of the public engagement and the market study. So thank you very much. As I said before, we'll leave this open for another 15 minutes. Kevin, any last comments you want to provide to the community?
No, I just thank you everybody for your input, and we look forward to getting your thoughts on other programming opportunities out there as well. And apologize that we didn't address everything that everybody wants, but we want to hear from you, and obviously we want to try to provide the best possible center for the city of Rexburg. So thank you everyone, and enjoy your evening, and appreciate your attentiveness throughout this whole presentation.
Thank you, folks. Have a great evening, and have a great weekend. Take care.